Hello, everyone, and thank you to everyone for joining our webinar here today. We welcome you to join us for this discussion around the state of web governance as we cover trends, innovations, and Acquia news. So let's face it, websites are not simple anymore. We're all using amazing new technologies like generative AI and highly interactive designs to engage our audiences in many ways. But this complexity has a side effect. It often creates unintended barriers. Now, the scale of this problem is truly staggering. In a recent WebAM study, found that over 96% of the world's top million homepages have basic accessibility failures. And this isn't a fringe issue, it's the default state of the web. And it means that we're losing engagement and potential revenue from a huge portion of our audience. So that's what we look forward to discussing with you here today, as we can help you better manage your websites for greater performance, accessibility, and impact. I'm Jake Athey, VP of Sales and Go-to-Market for Acquia's DAM PIM and Web Governance product lines, and I'm joined here by two incredible speakers, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves, including Alec and Trupti. Alec, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Very nice to see you here on this webinar. My name is Alec. I'm a Director of Product Management looking after the web governance product at Acquia. Over to Trupti.
Hi everyone, I'm Trupti. I'm from Accelerant. At Accelerant, I lead initiatives around testing strategy, accessibility, and continuous quality improvement. Very excited to be part of today's session with Jake and Alec.
Yeah, thank you, Trupti, and thank you to Accelerant as one of our partners who is supporting today's webinar with your thought leadership as well as some of your wisdom and best practices through our collaboration together. A few housekeeping items before we go further into our webinar. Know that this webinar is being recorded, and a recording of this session will be available after the event to all that registered. It'll also be posted on acquia.com. And please submit your questions using the Q&A feature. And if we don't get to your questions during the live session here today, we will be sure to collect all questions and answers and get back to you after the event. So we encourage you to ask all of your questions throughout today's discussion. Here's a look at today's agenda. We're going to first start off with a look at the trends impacting web governance today. And then we'll talk about how to improve websites with better governance. And then we'll get into the new capabilities and roadmap items with the Acquia Web Governance product line. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end, and we encourage you to share your questions throughout today's webinar. All right, we want to start out with a quick poll question before we go further. And here is the question: where do you face the most accessibility compliance issues? And answers being digital assets such as PDFs, videos, images, website design and navigation, content structure and readability, or all of the above. And if you're not sure or still evaluating, that's okay. You can select that option too. So we'll give it a few seconds here as you provide your answers to where do you face the most accessibility compliance issues. Give it a few more seconds here. All right, I think we're nearly complete as we have over 70% participation in today's poll. That's pretty good. Once we get to 75%, I'll quickly move on. Last chance, where do you face the most accessibility compliance issues? As we've reached 75%, I'm going to end the poll. All right. And if we share results, it looks like the top answers are digital assets at 52%. Followed by all of the above, which includes website design and navigation, content structure, and readability. And it's good to see that most of our audience is aware of some of the accessibility compliance issues that you face, and a few are still evaluating, and that's okay too. All right, moving on. With that as the backdrop for discussion, we're going to talk today about the top trends impacting web governance here as we start. And as we dive into our discussion here today, we encourage you to consider, where are you at in your web governance journey? Now, the first trend may not come as a surprise. As you can see, generative AI tools like Gemini and Midjourney are no longer future technologies. They are already transforming how we create content. And according to the Marketing AI Institute's 2025 State of Marketing AI report, 40% of our organizations are actively in the experimentation phase right now, with only 18% in a mature stage. Now, the upside is massive. Marketing has the opportunity for hyper-personalization and dramatically reduce time to market. However, speed without control invites risk, and we are facing threats like AI hallucinations that can damage brand trust, potential copyright infringement risks, and the fast creation of inaccessible web content. And speed cannot compromise accessibility and compliance. And so our response really requires full cooperation between marketing and IT, with the need to enforce human in the loop with AI as a co-pilot, not the driver, or say as a thought partner, not the thought leader. That's you. We really must establish clear policies mandating human review and final judgment of all public-facing content. And then harnessing AI for governance. We need to implement guardrails, such as the scanning and tracking that the Acquia Web Governance capabilities are a part of as part of your web governance strategy. And we can also use the very power of AI to audit itself, scaling our accessibility checks, monitoring brand voice, and ensuring compliance automatically, which leads us to our next trend. Now, this slide shows the positive vision of AI, using this technology to make our web presence genuinely inclusive. And the trend is that advanced AI, specifically large language models, computer vision, and autonomous agents, are becoming powerful allies in the fight for accessibility compliance. The impact is truly transformative, as many find the work important but struggle to continuously invest the time. AI will provide real-time, built-in remediation, guiding our teams to fix issues and helping users navigate complex web experiences. It can auto-generate essential descriptive content, think alt text for massive image libraries, and real-time video captions that previously took hours of tedious manual work. And yes, we can also do that with Acquia Dam today. Now, crucially, AI allows us to shift left. It scans code bases during development to flag and suggest fixes for accessibility barriers before they ever reach the user, saving us time and money on retroactive fixes. Now, Alec will cover more on our vision and roadmap later in this webinar in just a bit. And to capitalize on this, our response must be strategic. We need to identify pain points within our existing workflows. Where are we spending the most time on accessibility? And that's where we surface our AI opportunities. And we must experiment and test new AI tools with the highest standards, focusing on accuracy, not just speed. And we have to define quality control criteria. Remember, AI-generated alt text, for example, must be accurate to the image's context, not just the literal description. And finally, we must take a continuous improvement approach. AI is a new layer of accessibility strategy. We adopt it, measure its impact, and refine our governance continuously. Now, a key underlying driver of all web governance today is a dramatic increase in legal pressure. Laws are being enforced globally, setting universal standards for how our websites operate. And so the trend is clear. We are now held accountable to rigorous standards like UCAG 2.1 Level AA for accessibility and a constantly shifting landscape of privacy laws from GDPR to CCPA and new state laws, all carrying steep penalties. Now, compliance is no longer optional. It's the cost of doing business today. And we are also seeing the beginnings of sustainability compliance pressures related to digital carbon footprints. Now, the impact of this pressure is twofold. We can use legal risk to build a strong business case to invest in improving our digital reach and genuinely serve our customers with accessible and safe experiences. But the immediate risk is severe. We are exposed to significant financial penalties and crippling brand reputational damage every day that we fail to comply. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and this information is just for informational purposes, only to provide our customers and our audiences with a general understanding of current legal developments. Now, our response looks like integrating compliance into our operational frameworks, where you can assess where we're at. We need immediate cross-functional audits to establish a baseline maturity score for accessibility, privacy, and security across all domains. And then prioritize important pages. We can't fix everything overnight, so we must prioritize critical user journeys and pages, forms, checkout processes, and core informational content to ensure the highest risk areas are compliant first, and then align our teams to act. Now, governance cannot live in a silo. Marketing, IT, and legal must act as one team. We need clear roles for content ownership, code enforcement, and legal sign-off. And then track progress. Finally, we must implement a centralized GRC, governance, risk, and compliance dashboard that tracks our improvement against the WCAG and privacy standards, giving us clear, defensible evidence of our progress for the board and for regulators. And so this is really a key thing to take account of as we face increased legal pressures. Now, as we move on, hopefully you all have seen that we have renamed our platform, formerly known as Montito and briefly Optimize, to now Acquia Web Governance, aligning to the broader trends in the market and to our product innovation and roadmap, which we'll cover in just a bit. And with that, I'll hand it over to Trupti to share some of her firsthand experience of improving website governance with our partner at Accelerant.
Thank you, Jake. Hello again, everyone. So today I'll walk you through how we have partnered with Acquia to make web governance not just measurable, but also actionable. We'll be taking a look at three quick things today. The core features that actually drive quality, how continuous testing evolves into true optimization, and a short case study where one of our team achieved measurable stability and long-term accessibility success with Acquia Web Governance at the core. Accessibility, performance, and SEO are three parts of the same promise. A fast, inclusive, and meaningful experience for every user. If any one of them fails, the digital experience breaks not only for the users with diverse abilities, but also for users who are just trying to find out and use their site efficiently. That's the reason Acquia Web Governance tool is so powerful. It helps team measure and maintain quality continuously, not reactively. All right, when we talk about quality in web governance, it really comes down to five practical themes where teams can actually start taking action right now. Jake, can we go to the next screen? The first is accessibility, scoring, and recommendation. We always start with accessibility because if people can use your website, nothing else matters. A web governance automatically scans all the pages of your websites and flags all the issues like missing alt text, low contrast, heading problems, and many others. But the best part is it doesn't just tell us what is wrong in your website or on the pages. It gives you clear suggestions and recommendation on how to fix it. So instead of waiting for a big audit report later, our QA and dev teams can fix issues right inside the sprint and move forward. The next part is SEO. This is actually where the governance goes beyond just the code. Web governance highlights missing page titles and canonical tags, and many other things that actually affect how easily people can find your content and your site. So QA and content teams can check that every page isn't just functional but also visible and optimized. Then comes performance. In web governance, this tracks key metrics like largest contentful paint, layout shift, and other things that affect speed and stability of the site. That helps us make sure that when we fix accessibility, SEO, and other functional issues, we don't accidentally slow down our site or break the user experience when we are actually building our websites. One thing I love about this historical trend in web governance is that it shows you how your our scores changes from sprint after sprint. So you can actually see your progress that you have made in SEO, accessibility, performance, and all other factors. It's a difference between saying that we have fixed it and proving that this is the way the site is getting healthier over time. And finally, all of this comes together in one view. Accessibility, SEO, performance, all of this data is shown together for QAs, devs, PMs, and other content teams or other stakeholders like account leads or even the client. That means no silos, no misregression, and faster closure of all the issues. Everyone sees the same picture, and that makes web governance a shared responsibility. So we have seen these key features which help us measure and track quality and web governance, but measuring alone isn't enough, right? The real goal is to improve continuously, and that's where Acquia Web Governance changes the entire game that we do in delivery. So in most of the projects, especially when timelines are very tight. Accessibility, performance, SEO, everything takes a backseat. Everything gets pushed to the end of the sprints or end of the UAT cycle. A team runs scans like using tools like Lighthouse, Wave. They find issues, they even fix them and move on to the next sprint. But total consolidation of all of these issues and all of these reports take a lot of time. And by the time these reports are reviewed, the sprint is already closed, and the same issues slowly and quietly pile up at the end of the project. So even though testing happens, it's not really optimization or governance of this issue. It's more like damage control. And after we started using Acquia Web Governance, once the story completely changed, because now accessibility, SEO, and performance metrics are tracked across all the environments in all the projects like staging, UAT, production environments. Everywhere we run the scans, we get the scores. So the issues are flagged very early with clear scores and practical recommendations that can be fixed inside the sprint. So now again, all of the team members in the project can see the same dashboard and work from the same data. The impact that all of this has brought to us is we no longer have to wait for the end of the sprint to see what went wrong. We can act immediately, show visible progress, and actually prove that accessibility, performance, and SEO are improving sprint by sprint. It turns testing from something very reactive into something continuous, like a habit, not a one time check. And this is exactly where Accelerant comes in. We help teams set up this model very quickly so quality improvement becomes part of everyday work, not just a QA task. This is how the Acquia Web Governance dashboard looks like. If you can see, there is a score for accessibility, there is score for SEO, performance data, everything in one place. And you can also see some scan history and important notifications on the dashboard. It gives the team a quick visual snapshot of where things stand and what needs attention. And if you move to the next slide, Jake. Yeah, this is my favorite part of the History Center. It tracks the accessibility and SEO trends across months, days, sprints, so we can actually show how our fixes, how our efforts made a difference to the site. It's a proof of progress, not just another document or a spreadsheet that says that this many issues are fixed. It shows a proper report of where we stand with respect to all of these parameters. Now, let me share a quick story from our projects. I'll keep the project name very confidential, but it's a pattern most of the teams will actually relate to. One of our client came to us for a major site migration, moving from WordPress to Drupal. When we did the initial audit, we found out that there were several issues with respect to accessibility. SEO scores were very below average, and even the load time was very low. Things like missing alt text, poor heading structure, and untagged elements were very common. Performance wise, the pages were very heavy, and some templates were very inconsistent. Basically, the foundation wasn't very unstable, but it needed very serious cleanup before we could migrate confidently. So after we started using web governance, and also when we started the migration, we brought in Acquia Optimize, which is now the web governance, to help track everything in one place. We set up scheduled scans on all the environment that we were using to monitor accessibility, SEO, performance, and across key templates. The dashboard gave our QA and the dev team a single view of where the biggest gaps were and where priority fixes needs to be done. This helped us prioritize fixes during the migration, focusing first on templates and components that impacted most of our pages. Instead of juggling through spreadsheets and multiple tools, Optimize gave us clear, actionable data that everyone could see. That shared visibility reduced confusion and made the QA dev collaboration very much smoother. And after the migration, the results were very, very good. After the site went live on Drupal, we saw a measurable improvement. Accessibility scores went up, SEO health improved, and page performance stabilized. And all this while we were actually delivering and working on the sites. More importantly, with this ongoing scans, we could track these metrics continuously. So even after the launch, the quality stayed intact. Instead of one big audit after every few months or after a sprint or two sprints, we had a consistent feedback loop that kept the site very healthy. So that's one example of how visibility and structured turn a complex migration into a measurable success. But at Accident, we've used the same approach across other enterprise projects, combining accessibility, SEO, performance, tracking to create not just better sites, but also sustainable quality over time. So if we move to the next slide, so this charts tells the story very clearly. Before migration, the site scores were very low, performance at 58, accessibility at 55, and SEO at 60. But after migration and setting up continuous tracking through Acquia Web Governance, we saw a major jump. Accessibility went up to 95%, performance reached to 98, and SEO improved to 92. That's the difference between continuous visibility makes, which teams can see, measure, and act on data in real time. If you move to the next slide, here's even though the starting score were a bit higher, we still saw big jumps after migration. Performance moved from 74 to 98, accessibility from 68 to 95, and SEO from 72 to 92. It shows that consistency in testing and visibility drives results, no matter what project you are working on. So at Accelerant, we support both web accessibility and PDF accessibility, whether it's improving your website accessibility or making your documents fully compliant. Our team works with everything from audits to remediation. The tables you see on your screen show different type of pages and documents, from simple text-based content to more complex layout with forms, widget, or scanned element. Each level requires a different validation and remediation efforts. Let's start with PDF accessibility. So PDFs can vary a lot in structure and complexity. So we categorize them into 4 levels. One is simple, moderate, complex, and very complex. So at the simple level, we are looking at the plain text documents like policy pages or letters that mostly need tagging and reading order checks. The moderate level includes brochures or guides with a few images or simple tables that need proper alternative text and logical structure. The complex PDF includes detailed forms, manuals, or reports. These often have multiple tables, sidebars, or layout elements that require more detailed tagging and validation. And finally, we have a very complex category covers scanned or image-based PDFs that need OCR tagging to make content fully readable by assistive technologies. So each level requires a different validation depth and remediation effort, which is why we are customizing pricing based on the document type and content complete. Now, if we go to web accessibility, for web accessibility, we take a similar approach here too. Every web page is different, and so we classify them based on interaction and component complexity. A simple page would be something like a text-based about a privacy page. Privacy policy page, mostly static content. Moderate pages would be something which has basic forms, a listing like a contact page or a block index. The complex category includes pages with dynamic content like modals, accordions, filters that need manual keyboard and screen reader validation. And then the very complex page are usually dashboard with multi-setup workflows where both manual testing and detailed remediation is required. Again, the goal isn't to standardize the price by page count, but to align efforts with actual accessibility work required. So if you have a website or digital documents that you want to make accessibility compliant, we can start with an audit first and then share tailored pricing based on your setup. The idea is very simple. Making your digital experience accessible shouldn't be complicated. We are here to make that process very clear, practical, and transparent. So, all right. So that's it from me today. Thank you everyone for your time and attention. I really hope this gave a good overview of how accessibility and continuous quality come together. I'll now hand it over to Jake to continue.
All right. Thank you so much, Trupti, for sharing your insights and your process for how to improve websites with Acquia Web Governance and the work that you and the team at Accelerant are doing. It's really great to see the results that you've driven and the customers that we've supported together. All right, now over to Alec to take us through the latest Acquia Web Governance capabilities and our forward roadmap.
Thank you very much, Jake. Yeah, all right. So Acquia Web Governance, as we have already mentioned above, is a suite of tools for web accessibility, content quality, brand and content compliance, consent management, data privacy, web performance, and more. There's a lot of different use cases is built in the web governance, but the purpose of this product is to enable our customers to perfect their web experiences, to ensure compliance, ensure inclusion, and optimize their websites. So, and before the roadmap, I'll rather quickly go through the recent updates that we released just recently. So several capabilities that were targeted to catching the issues earlier in the process to automate the flows and delivering integrated capabilities within the digital experience platform. Specifically, Quick Scan is, as the name might suggest, means that it performs rapid scans of web pages to detect accessibility, content, and SEO issues. A notable feature of this capability is that it's possible to run it on the draft pages that are not yet published. meaning that it allows to enhance the experiences, detect the issues before they are published and before your visitors of your websites see that. And this capability is available to all our customers. It has no usage restrictions, so just go and use it as much as you want. Yes, and then if you might be aware, Acquia has a very intimate relationship with Drupal. So this integration that we have built allows to run the same quick scan within the Drupal editing interface. So just with one click from the Drupal editing screen, you're going to get the evaluation of the accessibility, readability, SEO, privacy issues on this specific page. And this means that you don't have to leave your editing workflow, right? This allows you to stay focused on the editing web page. And for the all optimized customers, I should say for web governance customers, we are offering unlimited scans with this Drupal module. And more than that, this Drupal also works with the Experience Builder, which is a new editing interface, also known as Canvas, and it's available out of the box with Acquia's SaaS CMS source and has unlimited entitlements for accessibility scans within that interface. So AI-assisted policy, of course, there is AI, and one of the innovative solutions that we have developed is adoption of language models for creating custom policies. Acquia Web Governance has a very strong customized policies capabilities, so those that you can create so that they are not just barely checking against WCAG guidelines, but also do any complex validations that you would need. Now we are making it much easier to create those rules. It's basically talking to a chat, and after a conversation with AI, it will create these rule, and then you can apply it with one click. And then less of a feature per se, but more like a continuous updates to our system. Nonetheless, it's very important to mention here that we have internal policy of regular enhancements and updates to our accessibility checking engines and accessibility modules. We release typically twice a year, sometimes more often. And the goal here is to ensure that the checks are consistent, performant, reliable. For example, in the latest updates, we added categorizations of the issues to make prioritization easier. We added support for shadow DOM technology to make it more precise and detect actually relevant issues. So this is an ongoing continuous effort. Future enhancements. And at this moment, I usually say that the human race is not very good at predicting the future. So things may change. So don't take it as it's necessarily going to happen precisely this way, but this shows the direction where we're going. So the near-term roadmap, I'll talk through the key features and then a couple of them in more details. So we have 6 themes in the roadmap for the rest of 25 and 26. They are user experience optimization. So we're simplifying our UX flows within the product, and the goal is for the customers to get to value faster and make onboarding easier and usage of the product very simple. Accessibility excellence. Well, the product needs to do its core work well. So accessibility is one of the core modules. So as I mentioned before, we continuously work to provide better accessibility validation features. Reporting and ROI justification. So new reports are being launched. They have been launched this year. We continue implementing them with the goal to present the trends and also to cover the need of large organizations to report on multiple digital properties across the organization, across multiple roles. And what we also see here is, as any business function, accessibility and web governance need to justify the investments in itself. So we're helping the responsible people to do that with these reportings, providing the value as a report. Ecosystem integration. We understand that we're not alone in the world. Building these integrations into content authoring, development, workflow management tools is crucial. And this includes integrations with multiple tools and including Acquia portfolio as one of the vendors as well. Autonomous workflows. No one can get away now without talking about agentic AI, and it's a thing. So we want to achieve sufficient efficiency for our customers by automating workflows like investigation, reporting, remediation, and accessible content creation within the platform. So, and tailored web governance, mentioned already, it's a set of capabilities designed to solve non-standard governance use cases, right? In comparison to out-of-the-box accessibility tools, which run checks against WCAG, the proper web governance tooling should be able to cater for non-standard cases for more complex organizations. So I mentioned UX simplification. And in early 26, we are updating our administration and account setup UX and interface so that onboarding from getting the customer to onboarding takes less time and less effort. User management takes time, less managed. Domain management takes less time and less effort. And then we're releasing our new accessibility module. And specifically for this one, it's one of the core modules. And here we include updates to simplify the user flows, updating navigation, and all of that with the key metric of getting from the issues detected to issues remediated faster. We also try to reduce the noise and fatigue from multiple issues being detected by the system. And it is a multifaceted work that we're doing on both backend to avoid false positives or checks that require manual evaluations, and the UI where we surface the issues in the properly prioritized manner. And also, so we're looking at Q1 next year to deliver the remediation helper. So this will focus on suggesting how to fix the issues found on the web page, but not only like changing the code itself, but rather on understanding where this issue is taken, putting into the context. So if it's the issue found on multiple pages, we can detect that as well and suggest the fixes across your digital properties. So adding additional context on top of that. And then integration. In this space, we already have public API that's available to all Acquia Web Governance customers to use in their scenarios. We are converting that in the full-blown integration framework by adding an SDK to develop integrations. Also, on the roadmap, I have connector modules to workflow platforms like Jira, also CMSs and BI tools. Specifically for Jira, a connector that we are releasing also early 20s. It will be able to send issues found by web governance into your Jira and then update the statuses of those once Jira tickets are fixed. And then AI. So in the very nearest future, as I said, we're going to see two additional AI releases. One of them is detection of the languages, language match. That's use AI to detect the language of the page and thus minimize false positives in spelling and readability and help the websites be more accessible as well for screen readers. And then accessibility AI-based remediation, as I mentioned, a tool to suggest fixes and guide customers through the process. And then later in 2026, we are looking to automate additional flows for manual and review checks. So some of the checks that are detected, but machine usually cannot identify if it's a real issue or it's potentially false positive. It requires a human to be involved here to review this, and this can be partially done with AI. So this is what we are looking to automate here. Therefore, removing the load on the accessibility experts and QA on your side, prioritizing issues. So taking into account the context of where the issue happens, taking into account the load on the web page where the issue happens, and so on, putting it into a sophisticated prioritization engine and then output a list so that allows you to focus on what matters most. Reporting, so augmenting the results by cross-referencing data available in our statistics module, for example, and helping with this. And then Jake mentioned earlier that AI has kind of double nature in its impact to for web governance. There is positive aspect, but there is also a danger there that people starting to generate content with AI and the content comes out incompliant. So we can validate these once it's published or once it's in the editing flow, that functionality exists already now, but there is also possibility to build so-called guardian agents that won't allow generative AI to produce incompliant content. I'll stop here and hand over to Jake.
All right. Thank you so much, Alec. We've had some questions come in through the discussion around our roadmap and recent releases, as well as some questions that have come in during the case study and insights that Trupti shared from Accelerant. So we'll take some questions now and welcome you to share more questions via the Q&A. We'll stay focused on some of the roadmap questions to start, and then we'll come back to some of the questions that came up during the Accelerant insights. Let's see. First question for you, Alec, is: are you working on module integration in any other platforms besides Drupal? How does web governance work with other CMSs, such as Cascade CMS?
So we already have a set of capabilities to integrate with other CMSs than Drupal, and that includes linking of the pages between the platform and the CMS. We have the capability to do the accessibility testing before publishing using browser extension and on your preview mode in the other CMSs. And we are working as well on the roadmap as well, integrations with WordPress and other systems. Let's go. Just stay tuned. We are adding them as we go.
Great. Thank you, Alec. All right. Another question that came up: does this work in English only or across languages? And I believe that came up when you were discussing some of our AI remediation.
So yeah, AI remediation works across languages. There's no limitation on that. So it's not in English only.
Great. Thank you. Another question. Like many people indicated in the poll, accessibility of digital assets, specifically PDFs, is a pain point for many, and many organizations are working to develop a process to address this issues. Currently, we have the Acquia capability flag PDFs, but go into PAC to better review them, then Acrobat to resolve. Is it possible to handle the entire workflow in Acquia? Or what suggestions do you have on how to best streamline the process for improving the accessibility of digital assets?
So there's definitely a possibility to get the PDFs flagged and reviewed within the Acquia platform. On how to do this in the process, Trupti, maybe you want to comment on this. Definitely have experience with this.
Yeah, so when we scan PDF pages, there would be some recommendations that are present, and we will be fixing those recommendations, and based on that the pricing and everything is shared. So if there are assets, digital assets like documents of PDFs, we can take a look at them, we can do an audit, and we can identify on what kind of pages they are, and then based on that we can set up a package or discuss further things.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Trupti. When new checks are being released, if we have websites already showing as 100% compliant, will we need to go back through and re-audit websites against these checks?
Yeah, so the short answer to that, it depends. So when we release new checks, they can either add and find more. So if we added new checks and made them more precise detection, they can find more issues on your website, or they can be more precise. So we will remove some of the false positives. What I need to tell to you is that you don't need to go and regulate it manually. The system rescans the websites for you, so you will see the results, and then depending on what you get there, you will either stay at 100% or drop, and then you will need to validate those changes.
All right, thank you, Alec. This next question pertains more to the future of AI innovations and automation. Many of the checks are currently manual. How much are you hoping to automate with AI? How would you answer that, Alec?
Well, we internally in the team had a benchmark of 40%.
Incredible. Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you. Okay. And another question is really, how do we plan and prioritize our roadmap? Would you be able to speak to that, Alec?
So it's a very complex process which takes into account both our customer interviews and the insights that we receive from our customers, and also the market trends that we see on the web governance market and in the world.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And if you have more questions around our roadmap, I'd be happy to schedule a personalized session directly with you. All right. A few more questions that came up during your presentation, Trupti, if you can share more about what are Axe, Lighthouse, and Wave.
So Axe, Lighthouse, and Wave are actually tools which are browser-based, browser extensions. We can use this tool to manually scan one page, but it will not scan the entire site as web governance tool does, and it will not also give you recommendation as we get in web governance. So these are tools which are helpful, but not to a certain extent where the site is very large or where the teams are working on different things. So it's basic scanning. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And some of these other questions I think are more customer specific. And one question being, is Accelerant added onto Acquia Web Governance? Or if we're already a Acquia customer, does anything change? And if I'm understanding the question, Accelerant is one of our elite partners who we work with for a lot of our Drupal, web governance, other digital experience service and integration work. And Accelerant, we highly recommend for anything to improve your web experience and web governance. Some of the questions around some of the pricing that were shared, happy to engage with you directly with a follow-up call. It may depend on some of the additional information we would need to provide best answers. So we'll look to follow up with you there. All right. Here's a question. Do you see the UK increasing the legal requirements of EQA to bring itself in line with compliance like EAA? Alec, do you have a perspective there, or Trupti?
I can get back to this question later if that's okay.
Yeah, quite all right.
Yeah, we can get back to it. But on top of my mind, we don't see like the clear indication that it's happening there, but potentially it's going. And that's actually something that we would like to hear from our customers as well in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. We would welcome more discussion around how are you and your organizations viewing the evolving legal requirements and the compliance landscape, in your countries or your region. All right. Well, I think that's all of our questions. If we didn't answer your question here live, we will follow up with you and look forward to more discussion to follow. All right. Last chance for questions if we have any outstanding questions. And Alec and Trupti, anything you would like to add based on our questions?
I think we're good.
All right. Very well. Well, I'll take us out here. In addition to the product roadmap, another great development for us is the launch of new Acquia Web Governance user groups. And I'm so excited about this. Anytime we can get our communities together, virtually and in person, to further exchange ideas and best practices and lessons learned, that's a huge win. And I celebrate that we're launching new Acquia Web Governance user groups. Our first meeting coming up in just a couple weeks, November 12th. 2025 at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. GMT. We invite you to join us for a conversation around integrating accessibility, practical guide to prioritizing issues with Acquia Web Governance. And these user groups will be led by Acquia leaders across our web governance, customer success teams, as well as our partners and customers. And we welcome all Acquia customers to join us for this user group. Of course, it's geared up for Acquia Web Governance customers, but we welcome all Acquia customers and partners to participate in this discussion. And you can learn more and sign into the Acquia Academy to register. If you go to acquiaacademy.com, look for Acquia user groups, and you can follow this URL here. All right, to wrap up, we leave you with a few words from Deborah Rue. And I really like this statement. Accessibility allows us to tap into everyone's potential. And that's really what drives us here at Acquia and with Accelerant. And we hope that drives you too. And we're so grateful for your participation here throughout today's webinar. And we thank you for joining us. Again, we have had some time for questions and answers, but we welcome you to share any additional questions that you have with us. You can get in touch with your main Acquia account manager, customer success manager, or through Acquia support, or you can reach out to us directly. We invite you to get in touch directly with Alec and I, or Trupti with Accelerant, if you'd like to discuss any of the ideas shared here today in more detail. And with that, we thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a great rest of your week. Alec and Trupti, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.